Okay, now I think it's time that you learn about major intervals as well. On the board you'll notice I've written a C major scale. There's a reason for this. All of the intervals built from the first note of a major scale are major or perfect. So from C to D is a major second. From C to E is a major third. From C to F is a what kind of fourth? Did you say perfect? I hope you said perfect. Remember, perfect intervals will never be major or minor. So fourths and fifths, there's no such thing as a major fourth or a major fifth. There's just a perfect fourth and a perfect fifth. From C to G is a perfect fifth. From C to A is a major sixth. And from C up to B is a major seventh. So if you have a major scale starting from the first note, any note counting up in that scale would be either a major or perfect interval above the first note of the scale. So if I started on F and I wanted to know what was a major third above F, I would go to the third note of the F major scale, and that would give me a major third. Now in your book, there is a graph that tells you how many half steps are in each of the intervals. I have to tell you something about that. It's included in the book because there's always someone who obsesses about counting half steps. It's a very bad idea. Don't count half steps. Build the scale to get the interval. The reason is, if you count half steps, you have a 50% chance of getting the wrong answer. Let's say, for example, that I want to know what's a major third above D. I can think of the D major scale and go to the third note, whole, whole, and I get an F sharp. If I just count half steps from D, both F sharp and G flat are the same number of half steps away, right? They're enharmonic, they sound the same, they're on the same key of the piano. So you could have answered F sharp and you could have answered G flat, and if you were counting half steps, they both would have been seemingly correct. But the only correct answer would be F sharp. F sharp is a major third above D and not G flat. Another thing to remember, if you do insist on counting half steps, is you'll need to make sure that the note is 3 letters away from the note you started on. And that's probably a good idea also if you're building a scale. So I would think D, E, F. That's 3 letters. So it has to be an F sharp. I could have built by counting half steps and then thought, well, G is not 3 letters away, it's 4, so that can't be right. It has to be F sharp. But the best thing to do is just to build the scale. I really recommend that you use scales to build your intervals. Major, perfect, or any other kind of interval too. So we'll talk about that next. Let's actually do a little more practice with the major and perfect intervals before we go on to anything else. So, for example, let's say I wanted to find out what's a major sixth above A. What I'm going to do is figure out what the 6th note of the A major scale is. So, I can just count letters or lines and spaces and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, F is going to be some kind of sixth above A. But I want a major sixth. So to make sure it's a major sixth, I'm going to build an A major scale up to this point. So I go whole, whole, half, whole, whole. And now I know F sharp is a major sixth above A. So there's my major sixth. Let's do another example. What if I want a perfect fifth above D flat? Well, it'll be the same thing. I'll think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'll say whole, whole, half, whole, and now I know A flat is a perfect fifth above D flat. Now I realize I'm going pretty quickly over my whole steps and half steps because I know them very well, I play the piano, but it may take you a little more time, and you should always make a habit of using your piano keyboard or your picture of the piano keyboard to help you when we're doing these things, because it's really important that you get used to finding those whole steps and half steps on the keyboard. The next kind of interval we're going to learn about is the minor interval. Now think about the words major and minor. If I were to say to you that I have a major problem, that would be a big problem. Whereas if I said I had just a minor problem, that would be a small problem. Well, with intervals, it's the same. The space between the notes is just going to be bigger with a major interval and smaller with a minor interval. Now let me repeat again. Perfect intervals are not major or minor. So we're not going to be altering a perfect interval to make it minor. Right now we're just talking about major and minor intervals. So that would include the intervals that are not perfect, which are what? Seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths. Right, that's what we're talking about right now. You can have a minor second, or a minor third, or a minor sixth, or a minor seventh. You cannot have a minor fourth, or a minor fifth, or a minor octave, or a minor unison. We know that's a major third, right? So if I know that C to E is a major third, and I want to make the space between those notes smaller without changing the bottom note, what will I do? I'll lower the top note, in this case by adding a flat. Now, minor intervals are not always going to involve flats, right? Because it depends what they were to start out. Sometimes it's very useful to imagine something like a number line with a natural sign in the middle. So we can imagine from lowest to highest a double flat all the way up to a double sharp. And then when you think about what you need to do to your interval, just look at where you are and see what you need to do to move in that direction.